I had this friend who has always romanticized about free traveling and hitchhiking. I have to admit, I was a sucker for it. We were very close friends, and eventually when Facebook came around, he sent me pictures of his travels. We started to come closer and closer to the point where we wanted to plan a hitchhiking trip across the country when we had the opportunity. But first, I wanted to go again by myself, to just train myself in the art of patience, which you need a lot of to hitchhike. It was from where I lived in Palmdale, California. I started getting easy rides from truckers, but only to towns just a couple of minutes between each other. I started to wait outside a truck stop in the Mojave, and this peculiar man in a small pickup truck came, and he said with a smile, "Do you need a lift? I am only going as far as Barstow." Now, Barstow is a gateway to what was Route 66, so I said sure. He took me as far as the outskirts, which, in that area, you can see the remains of what you would see traveling across Route 66. Abandoned or unfinished cafes, closed down motels, which I have to admit always makes me feel uncomfortable seeing it, especially at night. Now, after this strange man in the pickup dropped me off, I was walking to one of the abandoned motels just to take a picture. The pickup truck that dropped me off was on, but didn't drive off for a while. Like the driver was watching me or something. I thought to myself, maybe he wanted to make sure I was safe or something. Eventually the man drove off. I decided to sleep in one of the abandoned motels, which was illegal, and the cops could patrol the area, which, in this night of all nights, they didn't. I just crashed in what used to be room 3, and woke up the next day. I got a ride from this nice couple who were going to a pancake house. It was good food. I was hungry and in need of Wi-Fi to send pictures from my Android to my friend. I arrived in the pancake house, and as I was waiting for my order, I noticed my phone said upload complete. Maybe it was a picture I already sent to my friend and didn't remember? So I checked, and what I saw on the screen made my heart sink. It was of me, sleeping, with the text saying, "Should I or shouldn't I?" I told my friend if we ever do decide to go hitchhiking together, we should never sleep.
Number 3.
This story is from the point of view of a female. I used to do a lot of hitchhiking as a young teen, around 13 to 16. I had never had any issues. A few men hit on me, but backed off when I didn't reciprocate, so it was okay. When I was 16, I got in a huge argument with my sisters, and decided to walk from Corvallis to Monmouth, Oregon, a 45-minute drive at 4 a.m. I know, stupid. I was walking along and a car pulled out of a convenience store parking lot and sped off. About a half a block later, it flipped a U-turn and pulled up beside me. It was a young dude, probably mid-20s. He was smoking a cigar and listening to Guns N' Roses. He seemed really nice and trustworthy. He asked if I needed a ride, and I asked if he was a rapist or a serial killer. I always did before I got in a car as a joke. He laughed and said, "No, but if I were, do you really think I'd tell you?" I said, "That's a good point," and hopped in and told him where I was headed. He agreed to drive me the entire way, and I got really excited as I wasn't looking forward to the walk. He needed gas before we left town, so he headed toward a station, and not 5 minutes later, there were flashing lights behind us. He said he was worried because his license was expired. So I decided to just leave. The cop stopped me to ask my age. I lied and said I was 18 and gave my sister's name and birthday. He informed me he asked because the man I was riding with was a predatory sex offender who seeks out underage girls and uses weapons and violence to assault them. I panicked and split. A block later, the cops stopped me again and asked if I was ready to be honest with them. I was, and they called my sister to pick me up while I waited, handcuffed in the back of a cop car. After that night, I never hitchhiked again.
Number 2.
I think when you hitchhike, it's best not to have a fixed schedule or route. It is much more pleasant to follow whatever recommendations the locals give and drift day by day just a bit closer to your destination. Hitchhiking is not really a way of traveling. I think it's more of a way of thinking. A way from get from here to there thinking towards a more Zen-like, the journey is the reward mentality. Still, those 6 days I got pretty far. I hadn't tried very hard, but I had managed to get about 2/3 of the way to my uncle's place. I started on a Monday, had 6 days of luck, and just when God was getting ready for his day off, my luck disappeared. An older lady took me off the highway and dropped me at a rather desolate country road. There were still cars driving, but the sun was getting ready to kiss the horizon. If there's something you learn as a hitchhiker, it's that when dusk comes, no one trusts strangers anymore. No one trusts the lone, unkempt man that stands at the side of the road waiting for a ride. And if you are a lone woman standing at the side of a road, it's best not to trust the cars that stop for you. After half an hour of sticking my thumb in the direction of approaching cars, I realized there was barely a chance to get a ride, and certainly no chance at all to get a bed. I started walking off the road and towards a small forest. It's never good to sleep in the open. The police will bother you, or else drunk strangers might. Forests also give you cover in case you have to do your business, and they keep wind and rain away. In general, when my tent is in a forest, I sleep better than when it's at the side of a street. I had set up the tent and gathered wood for a small fire. My camp was just a few steps from the meadow that bordered the forest, not too deep inside the woods. I settled down, hummed a song to myself, and tried to read with my flashlight as the light source. The wood was too wet, and the fire produced more smoke than warmth. I had read 3 pages when I heard heavy steps somewhere behind me. Branches breaking, heavy, soft steps. A bear, I thought to myself. I was up on my feet with the flashlight in my left hand and a thick stick in the right hand. The flashlight was not able to reach far, and all I could see were trees. I stood and listened for 5 or 10 minutes. The light flashed from tree to tree, but the steps had stopped. Shouting keeps them away. Shout with a loud and deep voice, and they will keep their distance. You want to seem like a big animal. I shouted from the depth of my lungs. Instantly the steps returned. They were louder, heavier, faster. They came towards me from somewhere to the left. My flashlight searched for the source, but wherever I shone it, there was nothing. Suddenly I saw a large brown body moving towards me. It flicked from one side to the other, rushed through the trees. A huge stag jumped out so close to me that I felt the warm air of its body brush up against my arm. It ran past my tent. Seconds later, he had disappeared again between the trees. The footsteps faded into the distance. For a few more minutes, I searched the area where the stag had come from. I wondered whether it was my shout that upset it, or whether there might have been something else. With the flashlight in my hand and the stick at my side, I tried to read the book again. This time, my back leaned against the tent. I read a page, then read it again. Even when I read the page for a 3rd time, the words still refused to stay in my head. I gave up. I left my small collection of food in a plastic bag outside the tent. Then I myself crawled inside, pulled the zipper shut, and made sure the knife was at my side, and closed my eyes. Nightmares. The whole night. Just nightmares. Nightmares of something chasing me. Nightmares of someone catching me. Nightmares of someone cutting me open. Nightmares that ended with my death, but each time the imaginary world turned black. I sank right into the next imaginary forest, right into the next chase. I woke up at 5 a.m., Birds were already singing, and through the thin plastic of the tent, I saw the first morning light. The uneven floor of the tent was uncomfortable. There were cold, hard lumps of soil under the plastic, but I was sure that I had cleared the space before I had set up the tent. For about half an hour, I tried to sleep. There was a stirring outside the tent. Some animal rummaging through the underwoods and shaking leaves. Something struck the tent. A loud, roaring moan. I sat up and slowly opened my pocket knife. The movement continued, more vigorously and loudly. Something repeatedly hit the ground. I quickly pulled the zipper of the tent open and crawled out. There was a fawn on the ground right next to my food bag. Its head was in my direction. It made a faint, huffing noise. I didn't want to get attacked by a deer for approaching its fawn. The fawn struggled to get up. I looked around but couldn't see its mother. I got on my feet to sneak away. I ran past the fawn to get back out of the forest. I rushed through the trees and back onto the meadow. Then I ran to the street. Only in my shorts, I waved to passing cars, but they all just drove by until I finally stood in the middle of the street. A large black car stopped in the distance, and I ran towards it. The driver called the police. I'm not sure whether he did it because I begged him to do it, or because a screaming, half-naked man jumped up and down in front of his car. The officers walked me back to the forest. The fawn's body was ripped into pieces. Part of its leg was shoved into the ground, the neck clearly broken. The officers said I would have to come with them. I asked to at least pack my belongings. They watched while I packed my sleeping bag and finally my tent. When I folded the tent, one of the officers gasped. He pointed to a small hole right below my tent. Inside the hole was a round, soft shape. It looked like a branch, if not for the wrist. They unearthed 3 bodies. They had all been cut open. I read the news articles. The people were identified as hitchhikers. 2 of them disappeared a year earlier. The other one 2 years before that. Still, their bodies were in perfect condition. Some expert was quoted that the moist and clay-like soil was what preserved the bodies so well. As a witness, I had to stay in town for a week. The police paid the hotel for me. Afterwards, I talked to one of the officers. I asked him whether they had any hints as to what happened. He said that they don't know and that they will likely never figure it out. He said the whole situation was weird, that it was odd because the bodies should have been rotten but were still in good condition.
Number 1.
In the late 70s, my uncle was studying medicine at the University of Chicago. After a morning class, he decided that he would hitchhike back home to Lincoln Park on the north side instead of paying for a taxi. A man drove up in a Plymouth Satellite and offered my uncle a ride. The man looked normal and seemed friendly, light-hearted even. So my uncle got in the car, and they started driving towards Lakeshore Drive. However, once they got there, the man drove south on Lakeshore instead of north towards Lincoln Park. My uncle told the man he was going the wrong way, and to turn around and head north. The man looked at my uncle, put his hand on his knee and said,
"No, son, you are coming with me,"
and smiled darkly at him. My uncle froze in panic, and when they hit traffic near the South Shore, he quickly unlocked the passenger door and ran away without looking back. A year or 2 later, on a cold December day, my uncle was having coffee in a cafe with my future aunt when he caught something on the TV that made his blood run cold. He saw the man that had picked him up from school that day the year before. He had been arrested for the suspected rape and killing of over 20 young men and boys. The man on the television was John Wayne Gacy, and he had removed the door handle off the passenger side to prevent the men he picked up from escaping. Hey guys, hope everyone is fantabulous. Just want to give a big thank you to Lilac for the thumbnail art that she provided. She's a lot of fun to work with. You can find links to her pages in the description of the video. As always, please remember if you enjoyed the video to like, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe. Sleep well, everyone.